you are ordered to be free. That is to say, you are required to do actions which will be acceptable only if you do them voluntarily. And this basic contradiction that underlies our sensation of personal existence is the result why most people are confused, and why there is a nagging sense of frustration underlying all civilized human existence. Because you are trying to solve a self-contradictory and therefore insoluble problem: how to be responsible. You see, the word responsible carries its own contradiction. It carries freedom. You are able freely to decide upon your own actions, but you must be responsible. You must do what you're told. So that paradox creates then the sense of the separate ego, which is, if anything, is a hallucination, because it doesn't correspond to any kind of scientific facts whatsoever. The separate organism, although separate, although having a clear outline and identity in that sense, and although every human character is unique and different from all others, nevertheless, every organism goes with its environment inseparably. And the behavior of organism-environment is a single field of behavior. These are the facts as they are seen by physicists, biologists, and ecologists. But our experience, our sensation of our own existence is not in accord with the facts. So what it seems necessary for us to do is not, as it were, to try to get rid of the sense of having a separate ego. You can't do that. You can't wash off blood with blood. And if you try to get rid of it, you actually intensify the hallucination that it exists as a real thing. But the ego exists in the same way as the equator. That is to say, it is a social institution, an imaginary boundary, which has a certain convenience to it. But when you start mistaking social institutions for physical processes, you are under a hallucination. So then, could we possibly go to a state of consciousness in which, without giving up the spotlight, that is to say, the faculty for conscious attention, and for constructing symbolic worlds, by selection among our sense impressions, could we do that not sort of all by itself in a vacuum, but against the background of more generalized awareness? Because after all, every particular activity, every tracing out of details, as I pointed out yesterday, requires a background. So the background of ordinary attentive consciousness, looking at, is generalized awareness. And the more you become aware of generalized awareness, the more you realize that you and the external world, right out to the furthest known galaxies, are a single process. And so when this begins to appear, one moves into state number 4, which I have called sensory awareness. There is a Zen saying, when looking for the pillow in the dark, the mind is all in the hands. Now, it's very interesting how you can, as it were, shift your mind all over yourself. Normally one thinks of it as in the head, although for Chinese and Japanese the center of the mind is always in the center of the chest. And that means the heart mind. And they feel that they think from here. We feel, of course, that we think from here, and that we have a little man inside our head who is the ego and directs it all. But you can, as in the saying, you are looking for the pillow in the dark, or you're looking for the soap in the bathtub when all the water's cloudy. The mind is all in the hands. Now beyond that, you can very simply get into a state of consciousness where your mind seems to be all over you, where instead of feeling that you are looking at things, you feel rather that you are becoming them. And the whole external world comes on, one could only say, in a very different way from the usual. The reason why this can happen is, of course, that all that we feel about the external world is in fact a state of our own bodies. What you are seeing now in front of you is how it feels inside your head, in the optical nervous centers. Your brain, and all that goes with it, is translating whatever there is in the outside world into states of itself, called color, shape, weight, texture, and so on. So all that you see is you. Really, physically. But also one must add to this that one of the things in the external world is you. So you are both outside and inside. You are something in nature, but all that you know of nature is you. And you'd have to take these two things into consideration simultaneously. So sometimes it might feel as if everything you see is inside your skull. And the next moment it might feel that your skull is in the middle of everything. Then the next moment everything is inside you, and then you are in the middle of everything, you see. So, in this state, you find that you less and less discriminate between what is important to be looked at and what is not important to be looked at. In order to enter this state, the first thing that is necessary is to slow down, to suspend judgment on what you ought or ought not to be doing. And here I would say then that I am describing the initial stage of a process of meditation. And in talking in general about meditation, it is absolutely essential to understand that one cannot meditate correctly if you do it as a preparatory exercise for something else. Meditation is not self-improvement. Do not enter into it under any such delusions. There is no one to be improved. Meditation is a form of enjoyment. It's a way of digging the universe, so that the whole of the sensorium, that is to say everything seen, heard, tasted, touched, and smelled, becomes much clearer. And none of it, as you learn not to think about it, it becomes much richer than it is when you think about it. And so everything starts to be more real, more alive, more glowing, and you suspend also judgments about things. What is good or what is bad. And in doing this, you introduce yourself to a fascinating world.